I am here because I'm going to read an article for you guys that I wrote. It's been 4 months in the making. It's called Corruption in Higher Education. And I worked very, very hard on this for a very long time. I'm going to give you a little bit of background first, and I'm going to let you know, for those of you that are new here, my name is Nicole Walls. I am the owner and editor-in-chief of West Virginia Watchdog. Also, you can find me on lumenreadmedia.com. On Lumen Read Media, you can read the article as well and also see additional documents that I used for the story. They're not all the documents. Some of them are just not for me to share, but there's some things a lot that you guys can see there. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well under Nicole L. Walls. So this story, when I first started it, came to me. I did not go seeking this story out in any capacity. I was told about Dr. Mirta Martin and Fairmont State and her contract possibly ending early. I had already shut down my page at that point. It was after the election, and I was going to take a hiatus until recently. But a friend had called me and asked me if I would please just cover the meeting and do something. They felt like there was just something not right about the situation. I didn't really want to get involved at that point, but this being a very good friend of mine, I agreed to go and live stream the meeting. And that was all that I had promised. While I was there live streaming the meeting, they had a nearly 3-hour executive session. During that executive session, I was out in the hallway, and I just decided to ask some questions. I'm somebody who wants answers to a lot of things. And as I asked these questions, I realized that I wasn't getting any answers. I got speculations. Some people said, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's this. Nobody gave me an answer that made any sense whatsoever. And I started to realize that the public, the students, the faculty, the staff, they might have speculations or they might have thoughts and opinions, but none of them actually knew what was going on. So I decided that I needed to get my questions answered, I'm sorry. And so that is how this all started. I've had over 40 confidential sources for the story in every degree of West Virginia, from the very, very top to the very, very bottom in every aspect. I was very annoying with these sources. Some of them, I contacted them 12, 13 times, and they were very gracious. They all felt that it was a story that needed to be told, even if it wasn't them themselves that could tell it. I went through hundreds of documents, hours upon hours of recordings. This was a labor of love, and there were very many times where I became overwhelmed and disillusioned and thought of just stopping and giving up. And I discuss that in this article. But I continued on, and I am glad that I did. So, no further ado, let's get started. Corruption in Higher Education. How a letter delivered to former Fairmont State University President Dr. Mirta Martin uncovered a corrupt world of West Virginia politics that included secret meetings at the Capitol, personal agendas, deep loyalties, and Governor Jim Justice. Part 1. By Nicole Walls, West Virginia Watchdog, September 2022. I rang the doorbell of Shaw House, the on-campus residence of now former Fairmont State University president. The sound of barking immediately could be heard as a figure approached the glass door. She greeted me warily, holding her small dog. She doesn't bite, she assured. I almost didn't recognize her, usually dressed to perfection with an unfailing smile and not a hair out of place. Dr. Martin was in slippers, with no makeup, wearing a housecoat and a tired face full of heartache. The large home, partially empty, was scattered with boxes and seemed to echo as her voice trembled, and she directed me up the stairs to her office. Immediately there she burst into tears, simply overwhelmed by just the presence of a visitor. This week, we started to pack, she shared. It's been really difficult. The inside world of public higher education is a perpetual executive session of NDAs and non-disparaging clauses. A world consumed with money, image, politics, and hypocrisy. A business of social status and bloated salaries. While students go into debt to get an education some could possibly achieve free on YouTube, and they rally at games and exciting rivalries, those on the top operate in a world very different than the one many will ever see. A president consumed with the obligations of their position. They are to be the image, the face of the institution, not bound by just the endless student events which they passionately show their support, but also to the staff and faculty which they must manage, carefully attempting to be objective and understand the positions, tenures, resentments, sense of entitlements, and demands of many personalities. There's the obligation they have to the donors. The big fish, often alumni, demand an attention and some level of expected smoozing in return for the promise of a donation. Often they have obligations to numerous boards throughout the state, which demand time and expertise in order to make collective decisions for all of the higher education institutions involved. They have their community that looks to the institution with a strong sense of pride, a symbolic beacon of beauty and admiration in their town. The institution may be one that many generations have attended, or could be a hope of others are now just finally able to achieve. The president's obligation, which stretch throughout their days, weeks, months, and year, in just these facets alone, would be one that we could look at as more of a public relations job than otherwise, draining them of the ability to lead normal lives or to give enough of themselves to those they love, because these presidents are a part of their institutions and love them as if they were every bit a living entity, much to the detriment of their personal relationships. Their devotion can be praised and admired, but their true sacrifice is rarely ever seen or understood, at least by anyone other than those that they allow in as they step out of their costume of public perfection in order to just be, for a short moment, themselves. But then we get into the true control of every college, the wizard behind the curtain, the Board of Governors. Appointed by the governor himself, each member has their own specific agenda and personal associations. The president may oversee the faculty, the staff, the donors, the students, but the Board of Governors oversees the president. Though when the bad is bad, rarely does the board take responsibility onto themselves. Much of the public does not see the Board of Governors, except perhaps maybe at the 6 required and often poorly attended public meetings held in accordance to the Open Meetings Act. Higher education is unlike any other major entity, yet it's run like a high-powered corporation while being a public, tax-funded institution. With this unique designation comes the entanglement of politics, money, and ultimately corruption. A good public higher education institution is a team, working together toward a common goal. Each member knows their role and does their best to stay within it. The lines get blurred when the role of board is not adequately conveyed to neither the public nor the board members themselves, resulting in ulterior motives and a battle for power that causes discord and confusion. The Board of Governors are the unseen entity which each president must run their decisions by. A president, as the face of the institution, may be vilified for a specific program cut, while in fact it was the Board of Governors who pulled the trigger and then refused the president the autonomy to speak freely on the subject. A board not properly held within their roles can easily become the puppeteers. Every meeting, every speech, every conference by the president thoroughly scrutinized and controlled. Many presidents may be no more than a ventriloquist doll for a Board of Governors who refuse to take accountability and then attempt to hide any semblance of transparency behind the guise of an NDA. Mirta came to Fairmont State University in October of 2017 with a resume of exceptional achievements. Speaking 3 languages and holding a bachelor's degree from Duke University, a master's in business administration, a PhD in philosophy, and over 35 years experience, Dr. Martin was easily a standout among candidates. She had an ambitious vision for Fairmont State, one that would have the college be viewed on the same playing field as West Virginia's other major higher education institutions. One source remembered Dr. Martin saying, "When people think of West Virginia higher education, they think WVU, Marshall, and the rest of them. I want them to think WVU, Marshall, Fairmont State, and the rest of them." During her time at Fairmont State, Dr. Martin's vision was well on its way to becoming a reality. A university drowning in debt and with the threat of a state takeover, Dr. Martin accomplished a $20.5 million turnaround in net position. Endowments to the university increased from $33 million to $47.2 million, and it was awarded a grant for nearly $1.8 million for a continued collaborative partnership with NASA's Independent Verification and Validation Program. In 2020, according to the Hechinger Report Financial Fitness Tracker, it was the only West Virginia public university to pass all financial stress indicators. Under Dr. Martin's leadership and during COVID, Fairmont State, while never laying off any employees, was able to maintain an A2 stable bond rating when many other institutions were being downgraded. Enrollment of first-time freshmen increased 3%, and by 2020, there was an admission yield rate of 15.7%, with a 6% rise in retention. 222 student athletes recorded a 3.0 GPA or higher during the spring of 2021, with 80 student athletes achieving a perfect 4.0. During her time as Fairmont State president, the university launched 36 new and unique programs. In collaboration with Lieutenant Colonel Joe Kirk, director of Aviation Centers of Excellence, the Flight Training Center was developed for the unprecedented demand for pilots worldwide. Since that time, the Fairmont State Flying Falcons has flown more than 10,000 flight hours and produced 250 flight certificates. In addition to becoming one of only 23 universities in the United States to partner with the U.S. Air Force and launch the Junior ROTC Flight Academy, Intelligence.com named it one of the nation's best online military-friendly colleges 3 years in a row. It was named as one of the top 30 universities for bachelor's degrees in forensic science, and the School of Nursing was ranked number 1 as the best nursing program in West Virginia by rncareers.org. The School of Education has earned an A rating by the National Council on Teacher Quality, and Study.com ranked it number 25 as the best education school in the country. Dr. Martin was appointed by Governor Justice to serve on the Blue Ribbons Commission for a 4-year higher education, where she was selected to serve on the Finance Subcommittee. She had an expertise in finance, and she was a great leader, another member recalled of Martin's time on the commission. When none of us could agree, she was able to take a formula, put it together, and get us all on the same page. The confidence in the leadership by Martin's colleagues was apparent in her being elected president of both West Virginia Council of Presidents and the Board of Directors of the Mountain East Conference. She was also a member of the Mountain East Conference COVID-19 Task Force, where she was looked toward as a model for many campus regulations. She had a very strict COVID protocols to keep her campus safe. Some things some of us would implement. Some were just too strict for us, one public university president remembered. No one ever questioned whether she had the best interest of her school at heart, though. We had a lot of admiration for her. Many of us never wanted to be on campus and would stay away, but Mirta never left. Students on campus quickly became a cheerleader for their president. Her unique style of personal relations was something they responded to. For them, it was the way that she understood personal relations was something they responded to. For them, it was the way that she attempted to understand life of the students more than others had before. Just one example of this was her insistence in living in a dorm for over a month to better understand the way that they operated and any improvements needed. She had an open door policy, regularly ate at the Falcon Center with students, and often handed out her personal cell phone number to those in need of help or mentoring. But it wasn't just students and other presidents that saw Dr. Martin as a leader to be admired. Numerous West Virginia publications also held her in high esteem. Just a few examples with her being named Wonder Woman in a profile done by West Virginia Lumen, listed as one of North Central West Virginia Life magazine's inspiring women, highlighted as a talent transparent by West Virginia Executive Magazine, and named 2019 Educator of the Year by WV News. In December 2020, Fairmont State University Board of Governors released a statement regarding Dr. Martin's evaluation going into the second year of her renewed contract. President Martin's tenure at the university has proven to be nothing short of impressive, and I look forward to the continued progress under her leadership. On behalf of the entire board, I am confident that Dr. Martin's knowledge and expertise in the ever-changing higher education atmosphere will continue to serve the university well. David Goldberg, Fairmont State Board Chair. President Martin has enabled the university to grow, putting the university on the map and earning national recognition in various arenas. We are grateful for the outstanding leadership displayed by President Martin and the quality, transformative educational opportunities cultivated for our students during her tenure at the university. Rusty Hudson, Fairmont Chair, Board Vice Chair. The meeting heard round the state. On Tuesday, May 17th, the day before a scheduled Board of Governors meeting, Dr. Martin was sent a letter to her Falcon family relaying her decision to not seek a renewal to her contract, which was due to terminate at the end of the year. In that statement, Martin expressed her intentions to fulfill the remaining months of her contract and assist with the transition of leadership. She also expressed her love and gratitude to the Fairmont State community for allowing her to serve as their president. I will step down at the end of my contract on December 28, 2022. I inform the board of my decision now to give the university ample time to safeguard the momentum of the institution and begin the search for a new leader. During the remaining time of my presidency, I plan to continue to lead the university forward and aid in the transition of new leadership. I am so incredibly blessed to have served in this role for nearly 5 years. During this time, Fairmont State has become my home, and the Falcon family, my family. It is an honor and an absolute privilege to serve all of you. It is also my honor to serve this institution and the state of West Virginia as your president. I have worked hard in and day out, with each of you by my side to achieve and exceed the goals set when I began my tenure. Dr. Martin, Fairmont State University President, May 17th, 2022. The following day, Wednesday, May 18th, the Fairmont State University Board of Governors held a meeting to discuss the president's announcement. Many suspected the announcement came as a preemptive attempt to protect herself from what the community felt was a predetermined decision by the Board of Governors. The conference room was uncharacteristically packed for a normal board meeting. Noticeably absent was the presence of many students who had already departed campus for the summer, leading many to question if the timing of the meeting was strategic, considering Dr. Martin's popularity with her students. All board members were physically present, with the exception of 3, one of them being Vice Chair Rusty Hudson, Jr., attending via WebEx. Only moments after beginning, the board adjourned into a nearly 3-hour executive session. Upon returning, the board voted to exercise the 60-day no-cause clause to end Martin's contract early, concluding on July 18, 2022. In addition to the termination of the contract, all duties and authority of President Martin were to be immediately stripped and transferred to Provost Diana Phillips. Board of Governors Chair David Goldberg abstained from the vote, which many speculated was due to the ongoing investigation that was being conducted at the time by an independent investigator hired by the university for allegations of harassment and bullying of Dr. Martin. David Goldberg has denied all of these allegations against him, stating, "I am the father of 2 daughters. I have run and been a party of organizations where I work with all different people. I don't bully. I'm not belligerent. I'm not inappropriate. I ask questions. I ask people the same questions I expect and ask people to ask of me. I treated people fairly. I treat people consistently. I've always done that across my entire career. So whatever people have said or not said, let it be reviewed. Let it be investigated, and it will come out. I have treated Dr. Martin. I have treated anybody on Fairmont State leadership team fairly. I've been consistent. I'm transparent. So people are willing and should be able to ask questions if they feel that something should be able to be asked Fine, raise it. But I have always been fair. I have always been forthright. I have always been balanced. I have never been inappropriate. David Goldberg, Fairmont State Board Chair. Staff Representative John Dodds and Student Representative Maya Bennett both opposed the decision. Regardless of the concern of the transition between an academic year and a calendar year, the board came to the conclusion in 2019 that this 6-month period, regardless of if it was a transition, was worth it to fulfill a 3-year contract rather than a 2.5-year contract, Bennett said. As a student and as a member of the Student Government Association, I am in full support of Dr. Martin, and my experience at this university would not be the same without her leadership and support. On behalf of a large majority of the students, I support her. Let it be known that this is a really difficult time. Board member Jennifer Kinty, who voted in favor of Martin's termination, stated, "There is a misalignment going into the new academic year of goals, and our goal is to run the university and bring it forward and build upon the good work that she has done. It is our responsibility as a board to make these tough decisions. There is nothing negative to Dr. Martin. She brought forth that she was not seeking a renew to her contract, and she was looking for another opportunity." The crowd in attendance roared with disdain over Kinty's comments, but she did not elaborate on the specifics of her vague choice of wording. Shell-shocked and stoic, Dr. Martin sat silent as the meeting came to an end. It was at this time, before the board had officially adjourned, that Faculty State Representative Gina Fantasia rose from her seat and approached Martin. She placed a piece of paper in front of her, without a word, and sat back down. Martin looked at the paper, and with obvious indignation, she placed it into her folder. It wasn't until later that that letter would become the catalyst to my investigation into Fairmont State University Board of Governors and its complicated world of half-truths, personal agendas, and propaganda. Cleaning house. As a resident of Marion County, I was aware of the divided community who often took to social media to express their thoughts on many controversial decisions being made at Fairmont State. The ending of the Performing Arts program and the separation from Fairmont Community and Technical College being the most prominent. Both of these decisions brought on strong emotions among locals, and the lines had been drawn. The day after the vote, I received an unexpected call from one source wanting to share information with me pertaining to a few questions I had. During that call, I mentioned that I was going to attempt to personally reach out to Dr. Martin to see if she would speak with me and provide further clarification. "She's not speaking to anyone," my source explained. "She's gone dark. No press, no visitors. She won't talk." I didn't know Dr. Martin for more than the casual moments our paths had crossed at an occasional event. I didn't know if this was a story that needed to be pursued or not, but I knew that I didn't have enough information to satisfy my questions. Not knowing exactly where to begin, I took a deep breath, and having faith I could trust them, if only in matters of higher education, I reached out to someone I knew could be an unbiased source, the president of a rival university. It was during this call that I was well educated on the likely reason behind both Dr. Martin and the board's lack of transparent communication with the public. Similar to those signed at Fortune 500 companies and some with monetary consequences in the hundreds of thousands, is a university's non-disclosure agreement or non-disparaging clause. This meant that no matter who was at fault, the other party had to just sit down, shut up, and keep smiling. What I can tell you about her professionally is I didn't like going up against her, the president expressed. Sure, people might have said things about her style, but I'm sure they would say the same things about me. The truth is, though, she was a strong advocate for her school. No one can deny she wasn't. When asked about their thoughts on the controversy surrounding the cutting of the Performing Arts program, they bluntly shared, "I would have made the exact same decision. I'm sure most would have. It wasn't successful, and you have two alternative higher education institutions within driving distance that have much better and more successful performing arts programs. She made the right choice." I ended the call with one final question, one that I ultimately found myself asking every president I spoke with. If she was a man, do you believe that she would have been perceived differently? After a quiet pause, they answered, "That's a really good question. I think we have to admit to ourselves that she probably would have been." In nearly 5 years, Fairmont State University's Performing Arts program had spent close to $5 million to graduate just 33 students, none of which worked in their chosen profession. A cost that could have graduated a projected 500 nurses in the same time period. The program had been under review for nearly a year before the cut was made, and the faculty was made aware of the severity of the situation. As president of the university, Dr. Martin's role was only to present multiple financial scenarios to the board. She made no recommendation. It was the Fairmont State Board of Governors, with counsel from Fairmont State Fine Art Directors and financial advisors in the best interest of the university, that made the decision to cut the program. The kids that come to Fairmont State University for musical theater were kids that wanted to sing in their church choir or wanted to act in the community play. We are affording the community all of that without the $5 million expense to have a major and a minor. We're giving the community what they sought and more. We actually are now stronger. We are putting on more plays. We are opening up to more of the community, which is what we wanted to do, to offer those funds so that the community could be a part of the university and the university a part of the community. And that's all being done through the Academy of the Arts. Just this summer, we put together 2 plays that involved kids in the community and community members. But the kids that came to us for majors, they're out doing retail. They're out driving trucks. The ones that end up at the Opera House or Broadway, guess what? They're going to WVU. And at times of austerity, universities cannot be everything to everyone anymore. They cannot. And that's why we were just one of the regionals. And now we're a destination because we have those programs. Dr. Mirta Martin. Despite the Fairmont State University Board of Governors ultimately being responsible for the cut to the Performing Arts program, Martin took on the public scorn and did so while maintaining a positive image for the university. Despite death threats and the need for police protection, less than a year and a half later, the same Board of Governors who gave Martin a glowing evaluation were now ending her contract and removing her powers. It was a letter faculty representative Gina Fantasia gave to Dr. Martin that solidified this decision. The letter stripped President Martin of her duties, powers, and responsibilities immediately and passed them on to Provost Diana Phillips. The letter handed to Dr. Martin was signed by Board of Governors Vice Chair Rusty Hudson, who attended the meeting via WebEx due to being out of the country, where he had been for a few days. The board received a letter from her the day before, and then about a couple hours after, if it was that long, a statement was released by her more broadly. The board met the next day, and we met in executive session. What would our approach be? We had been in many conversations about beginning the process of renegotiation or not renegotiation, which is what you do with president's contract for the last few months, and said it would start in late spring, and that's where we were. We were in that process. Then we got notice that of her decision, and then here we are acting accordingly. David Goldberg, Fairmont State Board Chair. When asked about how the Vice Chair Rusty Hudson was able to sign a document for a decision that had not yet been made, Goldberg confirmed that the discussions outside of meetings were had and that the document was prepared and signed prior to Rusty Hudson leaving the country. We had a letter signed and presented it to me that I could give to the president on Rusty's behalf. But we discussed how we wanted to proceed in executive session, and it was ratified after. That's when the letter was given. It was given after. This statement not only violates the Open Meetings Act, but it also contradicts board members Jennifer Kinty's statement that it was only Dr. Martin's announcement the day before that brought forth the board's vote. Fairmont State Board of Governors has come under scrutiny before for allegations of repeated violations of the Open Meetings Act by faculty and community members. Professor Galen Hansen, being the most outspoken of these, has filed numerous lawsuits against the Board of Governors. Most notably is a lawsuit filed by Hansen and Dr. Albert Magro against the board for violations of the Open Meetings Act during the 2017 presidential search. And more recently, a lawsuit filed from Hansen along with Fairmont State professor Dr. Francine Kirk and public school theater teacher Celie Olivito. alleged violations of both the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act in regards to the meeting held to cut the Performing Arts program. Additional reports of the Open Meeting Act violations since May 18th meeting have also come to light, including board members intentionally being left off of email threads, as well as the July 15th and July 23rd Board of Governors meeting that proceeded with no student representation. Officially, new board member governor's student representative Elijah Dozer was supposed to be sworn in and have orientation completed in time for board meetings after his predecessor's term was over. But when both former student representative Maya Bennett and Elijah Dozer attempted to schedule his orientation, they were told that it had to be rescheduled due to time conflicts. At the June 15th meeting, Bennett requested to be allowed to sit in as a student representative until Dozer could be officially sworn in so that the students would not be denied their vote and their voice. She was denied. Elijah Dozer's first Fairmont State University board meeting wasn't until August 18th. The board was not the only place student voices were being censored. After the departure of Dr. Martin, though one might argue this undefined censorship was not delegated to just students, but to any known or outspoken ally of Dr. Martin. On May 26, only 1 week after the board's decision to remove Martin, Fairmont State Student Governor Advisor Dr. Joy Hatch and Mary Incini were put on administrative leave. No explanation for their sudden removal from SGA or the university was given, citing personnel matters. Fairmont State student government had been outspoken in their support of the former President Martin and issued strong criticisms of the university for lack of transparency of the Board of Governors. Maya Bennett, the student representative and one of only 2 board members to vote against Dr. Martin's removal, is also a member of SGA, now under the direction of administrators Alicia Kulka, an assistant vice principal of enrollment and student life, and Ken Feddick, vice president for student success. SGA's actions were being micromanaged, and many duties previously afforded to them were requiring private approval in order to be executed. After being told that their advisors had been removed, executive members of SGA were aware that their constitution reserved them the rights to choose their replacements. I just want to make sure again, just moving forward, we're clear, Alicia Kelka explained to the bewildered students. So SGA does have that in their constitution, but the Office of Residential and Student Life and the Student Life Handbook has the final say on who your advisor, okay? So you all can present to us who you want to be your advisor. It should be a faculty staff member. I think there were some other things in your constitution that stipulated otherwise, right? Administrator, right? Who? You recommend to us who you want, right? And then we would give Feddick, would give the final authorization as clearance for that. Kelka went on to inform the students that the authority to send out mass communication emails, which had been afforded to SGA for years, was being revoked, and all campus-wide communications would now need to be vetted and to have prior approval. Just making sure that if there's any other campus-wide communication that you all intend to send out, that needs to be approved through us, okay? So before you just use campus-wide listservs, right? That absolutely has to go through the appropriate steps that cannot just be distributed out campus-wide or to campus community. So there's a policy that, and what I don't want to happen is, for there to be concerns or challenges, right? Moving forward with that, we just need to be consistent because, our policy stipulates that we can't do that. And for certain reasons, right? Like specifically, it tells you all the reasons like you can and can't do. Like when you send out those mass emails and such. When asked for the specific policies regarding this matter, Kelka first stated that the policies were all well defined and could be found in multiple handbooks. But when asked to be provided with copies of these policies, Kelka was only able to provide one policy, which was not able to clearly define her position. solicitation. The purpose of this procedure is to establish a protocol regulating solicitation on campus of Fairmont State University in order to avoid disruption of business operations or disturbance of faculty, staff, visitors, and students. This procedure applies to all university employees, students, and visitors, including those on satellite campuses. Soliciting shall include canvassing, soliciting, or seeking to obtain membership in or support for an organization, requesting contributions, and posting and distributing handbills, pamphlets, petitions, and materials of any like kind on campus property, or using university resources, including, without limitation, bulletin boards, computers, mail, email, and telecommunication systems, photocopiers, and telephone lists and databases. These procedures also apply to solicitation for commercial purposes, which means peddling and otherwise selling, purchasing, or offering goods and services for sale or purchase. Advertise material circulars or product samples, or engaging in any other contact relating to any outside business interest or for profit or personal economic benefit on university property or using their resources. Solicitations performed through verbal, written, or electronic means for commercial purposes are covered by this procedure. Items to be distributed or offered by sale which contain Fairmont State University's trademark, names, including building names, or design elements, t-shirts, posters, etc., must be approved by University Relations and Marketing. Fairmont State Student Handbook, Life Handbook, page 35. One issue the Vice President of Enrollment and Student Life did make clear: she took issue with the students discussing any accomplishments of Dr. Martin, especially if those accomplishments were financial. Insinuating any discussions of Dr. Martin's achievement in the last 5 years would make those employed at Fairmont State prior to Martin's arrival, and ultimately partially responsible for the dire state of the university at the time, feel resentful. It's just being mindful sometimes of how that sometimes comes across, right? Kelka stated. Because there are many people who have invested their careers here, who have invested their life here, so it's not always received well. Dr. Joy Hatch and Mary Incinity were not the only Fairmont State staff or faculty that found themselves on administrative leave or reassigned to new positions after Dr. Martin's removal. The university seems to be cleaning house of any allies of the former president and censoring anyone who isn't on board. An invitation to the Capitol. When his phone rang on June 7th, Fairmont State Student Government President Zach Taylor had no idea that he was about to unwittingly get caught up in the dirty side of West Virginia politics. The distinctively kind voice on the other end of the line was Hank Hager, the legal counsel for the Senate Education Committee. A letter Taylor had written on behalf of SGA opposing Fairmont State University's decision to terminate President Martin's contract was, according to Hager, making waves in Charleston, and some senators wanted to invite the young students to come down and make a statement to the Joint Education Committee on June 13th. On June 9th, Zach Taylor attempted to contact URM, the University Relation Marketing, to discuss whether they would be allowed to represent themselves as SGA and use the SGA logo on their printed statement to the committee. Since they were unable to make contact with URM, the decision was made to just represent themselves as FSU students. Taylor, who was unable to attend the committee meetings himself due to the participating in an internship in D.C., sent SGA Vice President Isaac Leach, Student Representative Maya Bennett, and House Representative Elijah Dozer in his place. For the sake of transparency, he also reached out to Ken Fedek to inform him of their plans. Fedek requested a copy of the prepared statement the students intended to read to the Joint Education Committee. Taylor did not provide that statement to Fedek until a later date. It was a beautiful summer's day when the three enthusiastic Fairmont State University students arrived at the Capitol in Charleston. Before they even had managed to enter the Capitol doors, they received a phone call informing them that they had been removed from the committee agenda. When asked for the reason for the last-minute cancellation, Hank Hager, who, according to the students, seemed genuinely apologetic, said he wasn't sure. The students, undeterred, decided to proceed with their objective, which was to be heard, even if that was just one-on-one with legislators. They were able to first meet with Senate Education Chair Senator Patricia Rucker, Republican from Jefferson County. Rucker also apologized for the last-minute change to the agenda and agreed to distribute the students' prepared statements to the other committee members. Following the joint committee meeting, the students reported that they had met with multiple other education committee legislators and were told by some of the members that the cancellation was due to higher powers. Fairmont State Board Chair David Goldberg discussed the June 13th joint education meeting. I know Jason Pizzatella was going to join and attend, but at the last minute, from my understanding, the agenda was changed and nothing formally of Fairmont State was asked to come in front of that committee at the June meetings down in Charleston. When asked about the FSU students that were invited to speak, Goldberg added, I got a call from the council for the committee. I said I was going to be out of the country, which I was. I wasn't going to be there. My understanding was they want somebody from Fairmont State, and they were going to have some students who were going to have comment. But I don't believe the agenda formally had Fairmont State on there. I don't know who spoke or that. I wasn't there. Rusty wasn't there. On the surface, Mr. Goldberg is being truthful in his statements. Fairmont State was not officially on the agenda, and it had been changed last minute. Since his dismissal of board member Jason Pizzatella's attendance due to the agenda change, and his assertion that Fairmont State was not asked to come in front of the committee is not accurate. On the posted agenda for joint Stand-in Committee on Education dated Monday, June 13th of 2022, agenda item number 7 lists only other business. With further investigation, it is in the still unposted minutes of that meeting, we discover agenda item number 7 is reclassified and better defined. Sources present at the meeting on June 13th were also able to confirm that FSU Board of Governors member Jason Pizzatella did attend the meeting and spoke to the committee. The final item on the agenda was an update on the status of Fairmont/Pierpont Memorandum of Understanding by Jason Pizzatella, Secretary, FSU Board of Governors. West Virginia Legislature Joint Standing Committee on Education Minutes, June 13th, 2022. Sources were also able to confirm that the higher powers referenced as being responsible for having the FSU students removed from the agenda was Senate President Craig Blair, a Republican from Berkeley County. He just said that we shouldn't be allowing the students to be making statements when Fairmont State doesn't discuss personnel matters and it wouldn't be able to respond, one source revealed. Pushing back on this, I expressed to my source my own personal frustrations with Senator Blair's logic. Fairmont State University Board of Governors and administrators had signed an NDA and may have been legally unable to speak openly on certain personnel matters. But students, other employees, and community members had signed no such document. After previous calls to Senator Blair requesting comment had gone unanswered, I attempted one last time, being transparent with the fact that he was being named in this article, and wishing to be able to give him the opportunity to clarify accusations against him. His very polite and professional assistant did return my call and stated that the senator would like a list of questions sent over. I complied by providing 7 questions that covered the full scope of the article. One of those questions, as an elected official who is a representative of the people and the taxpayers of West Virginia, do you have any comments regarding the censorship of students from a public institution due to an NDA signed by board members of an institution and not by the students themselves? Senator Blair did not respond. To read all of the questions sent to Senate President Craig Blair, as well as to review a few select documents used to write this article, please visit www.lumenreadmedia.com. At the board meeting in which Dr. Martin's contract had been terminated, the ability to speak, whether for or against her, had been denied to all employees, students, and community members. In what I personally found to be an ironic choice of words, Board Chair David Goldberg spoke of the students being invited to the Capitol. That's their choice to be able to speak however they want. They have every opportunity, as anyone else, to say what they feel and say, but they're one perspective. Addressing the speculation that someone at Fairmont State Board of Governors had made personal requests to have the students removed from the agenda, Goldberg stated, "I don't know what they were going to say and what their issues were. No one from student government has contacted me or the board as of late. I know that they were supporters of Dr. Martin, and I think that's great. Universities love their president, and I think that's great. That being said, don't know what their concerns were or weren't. I still have not heard formally from anyone from student government." According to FSU Student Government President Zach Taylor, this is not true. The members of SGA attempted to speak with all board members prior to the May 18th meeting that terminated Dr. Martin's contract, but were denied. One SGA member stated, "I asked board member Gina Fantasia if we could please just have some time to express to her the feelings of the students. And she said, I already know the feelings of the students," and walked away. At the May 18th meeting, all members of the Board of Governors were present with a formal letter from SGA, the same letter that has made its way down to Charleston and caught the attention of senators and initiated the invitation to come and speak. The majority of the board members, refusing the letter from SGA, left it on the table after the meeting. Searching for a new president. On August 11th, the first meeting of the Presidential Search Committee was held. The appointed executive members of the committee were also all FSU board members. Chuck Shields, Jennifer Kinty, and Kevin Rogers were presented with a variety of names from different organizations and departments within the university and would have to choose who would comprise the full search committee, subject to board approval. Of these nominated names, my sources say that approximately 6 to 7 of them were students coming from only 2 different organizations, the Honors Program and SGA. SGA nominated 3 students to serve on the committee. I guarantee you they won't pick any SGA students, one source expressed. When asked if this was because former Board of Governors student representative and current member of SGA, Maya Bennett, had voted against terminating Martin's contract, yep, and Zach has been a vocal supporter of Dr. Martin, so he's out. The board seemed very threatened by these young, passionate students, but I had to wonder why. Was it because they were afraid that the students might want a president similar to Martin, more student-centric, unlike interim President Diana Phillips, who has been vocal in her refusal to meet with students at all? Or did they fear SGA would hold the search committee accountable? Already facing lawsuits from their last presidential search for violating the Open Meetings Act, FSU has become known for their lack of transparency, and the SGA students wouldn't be complicit in their efforts to break the rules. I posed these questions to more than one source, and I had to both laugh and pause with sadness when they all gave me almost identical answers. I think it's both. On September 15th, Fairmont State University Board of Governors approved the nomination for the Presidential Search Committee. As suspected, no students from SGA were chosen to serve. Let's move on to part 2. Corruption in higher education. How a letter delivered to former Fairmont State University President Dr. Mirta Martin uncovered a corrupt world of West Virginia politics that includes secret meetings at the Capitol, personal agendas, deep loyalties, and Governor Jim Justice. Part 2. During the Martin Luther King Jr. weekend of January 2022, while the Northeast was being hit by a major snowstorm, Dr. Martin was in Washington, D.C. caring for her daughter, who had just had major surgery only days before. On Tuesday, January 18th, the day following the holiday, Dr. Martin had to schedule a meeting in Charleston with Senate President Craig Blair, Republican from Berkeley County, and other state legislators concerning the situation between Fairmont Community Technical College and Fairmont State University. Understanding the importance of the meeting, Martin left her daughter and drove over 7 hours in extreme conditions to head back to West Virginia. She arrived in Bridgeport, where she picked up graduate assistant and legislative liaison Eli Osborne, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Joel Kirk, director of the Aviation Center of Excellence. It was at this time, due to the poor weather conditions, a phone call was made to Senate President Craig Blair's office confirming the meeting was still taking place that day in the scheduled location. Senator Blair's office did confirm that the meeting was still being held and that Dr. Martin was expected to attend. Blair's office also shared that the meeting location had been moved to another larger conference room. The trio then drove the additional 2 hours to Charleston. Once arriving at the meeting, Dr. Martin was met by an extremely displeased Fairmont State Board of Governors Chair, David Goldberg. He expressed that he was not happy that Dr. Martin had arrived for the meeting and was under the impression that, similar to Fairmont's President Hancock, Martin had not been invited. Dr. Martin was adamant in her assertion that she was invited to the meeting, specifically by Senator Blair's office, and Eli Osborne confirmed the details of the invitation with Senator's staff just hours earlier. According to a notarized letter written by Senator Bob Beach, Democrat from Monongalia County, he had met with Senator Blair the week prior and confirmed that Blair had stated in his scheduled meeting, he had a scheduled meeting with Martin for the following week. The letter states, though, that Beach recalls Blair saying that the meeting with Martin was for that Monday, not Tuesday. Monday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, both a federal holiday and a state holiday. Later, it also became the day of a huge snowstorm that impacted most of the Northeast. The scheduling of former FSU president for a meeting date that she is steadfast in her claims were for Tuesday the 18th could easily have been an oversight on the senator's part. In an effort to give him the benefit of the doubt, one could say Senator Blair may have intended to meet with Martin at a different time, but the meeting with FSU and Fairmont already scheduled accidentally added her to the wrong meeting date. Of course, when she arrived, instead of apologizing for the error and making concessions, such as calling President Hancock and asking if he was also available to join, considering the meeting was about both of these presidents' institutions and that the optics of them not being invited were suspicious, Senator Blair refused to address the issue in any capacity, and Dr. Martin was made to leave the meeting. Dr. Martin contacted several House delegates requesting assistance in the matter. The delegates were also refused entry into that private meeting. A source at the Capitol who was witness to some of the events that transpired that day recalls seeing Martin after being banished from the meeting. Dr. Martin was always so professional. Seeing her, the president of one of our major public state universities, her staff member, and Joel Kirk, a veteran of this country, reduced to sitting on the steps of the Capitol because they were kept out of that meeting, was shocking and very uncouth. The details of that private meeting and those who were allowed to attend were recorded and notarized in that notarized letter written by Senator Bob Beach, a vocal opponent of the attempts to remerge the two institutions. The letter Senator Beach drafted was titled Details of a Private Meeting held on January 18th, 2022. In the document, Beach describes the days leading up to the meeting and his discovery that no invitation to attend the meeting was extended to Fairmont President Dr. Hancock or to any member of his cabinet. Senator Beach goes on to list the senators present in the meeting, Senate President Blair and his attorney, a couple of executive members of both FSU and Fairmont's Board of Governors, as well as lobbyist and political consultant Larry Puccio Sr. and his attorney. In which seems to be an oversight, the letter is missing only one senator's name and the members of the governor's office who were also in attendance. The point of the meeting was purely to establish the steps to proceed with remerger Fairmont and with FSU. I can say with certainty that both sides were strategically putting into motion the steps necessary to begin a merger. Both chairs of the Board of Governors from Fairmont State and Fairmont were in cooperation with Larry Puccio Sr., wanted to proceed with a merger. When asked by Senator Blair, both parties agreed to a merger and believed they had the support of their respective boards. Senator Bob Beach, details of a private meeting held on January 18, 2022. When talks of the remerger became public, many in the community wanted answers as to why the boards of both institutions were suddenly fighting to reconnect after just disbanding. The answers that were given came only from the board members and did little to satisfy public inquiries or understanding. The reason for the lack of transparency was the same reason that President Hancock was not extended an invitation to that private meeting at the Capitol, and why President Martin was kept out. The presidents were against the remerger, as were numerous faculty, staff, and students. Both presidents were issued gag orders by their boards, and neither were allowed to comment on the situation, forcing the public to assume that they agreed with the decisions of their boards when neither of them actually did. Testimony at the House Education Committee. It was Senate Bill 653, sponsored by Senators Mike Caputo, Democrat from Marion County, Ryan Weld, a Republican from Brooke County, and Mike Romano, a Democrat from Harrison County, that brought testimony to the House Education Committee in March of 2022, held over a period of 2 days, March 5th and 7th. That testimony gives us some insight to the motivations of Fairmont Board of Governors. After Higher Education Policy Commissioner Chancellor Sarah Tucker gave some background testimony, Fairmont's Board of Governor member Anthony Hinton and Chairman David Hinkle were called in succession. One listening to the testimony of only these two individuals with no other context may have been swayed by their words, but any average citizen with just a basic education would easily have become confused by the lack of information either men truly provided, while insisting to move forward with a bill they claimed was in the best interest of all involved. The spin of half-truths and contradictions was not lost on the House Education Committee. In that testimony, you can hear their audible frustrations with the merry-go-round of confusion. Board member Anthony Hinton begins by explaining to the committee members the major sticking points for Fairmont's board, the $1.5 million the college must pay FSU each year until 2032, and the airport hangar located in Harrison County at the Robert C. Byrd National Aerospace Education Center. The Aviation Maintenance Technology Program, commonly referred to as AMP, can't increase cohort size to the degree business and industry would like due to a lack of space. Also, the $1.5 million paid to FSU, as agreed to in the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, was causing severe hardship on the institution. The current board, according to Hinton, was very concerned about their financial future going forward. By merging the two institutions, he claimed that they would save approximately $10 million and be able to acquire a new hangar. After hours going back and forth listening to both Hinton and Hinkle testify to being the most informed on the subject and knowing what was best, yet still being unable to provide even basic information on their own institutions outside of the scope of the AMP program, the delegates had enough. Asking if they had brought with them either Fairmont's president or CFO, Hinton stated that President Hancock did not join them that day, and he absolutely was not responsible for bringing their CFO Dale Bradley, though Mr. Bradley was in attendance. President Hancock was prevented from attending the meeting by the board chair David Hinkle. Gagged, he was unable to not only attend, but to speak out and to share his true thoughts on the board's attempt of a remerger. CFO Dale Bradley was under no such gag order, since the Board of Governors is unable to issue such orders on administration, faculty, staff, or students. Upon arriving at the Capitol that day, Dale Bradley and Lila Grandstaff, former Vice President of Student Services, resigning just the day before, were met by the very displeased Hinkle. They were never expected to testify, but being personally asked by Delegate Danielle Walker, a Democrat from Monongalia, they came to clarify many untruths being told by some rogue board members. Much of their testimony didn't just misalign with that of Board Chair David Hinkle, Board Member Anthony Hinton, and later FSU Board Member Jason Pizzatella, but it completely contradicted it. Bradley would testify Fairmont was under no such financial hardship. In fact, the institution was doing well considering the loss of enrollment during COVID, and it had nearly $10 million in the bank. As of December 2021, and of $10 million in the bank as of December of 2021, and 180 days cash on hand. A report that Bradley stated was given to Fairmont Board of Governors during a December meeting, along with additional supporting documents since then. He went on to testify that they had already completed their budget for the following year, and payments to FSU were the first to be added. During the testimony, Delegate Doyle, a Democrat from Jefferson County, asked Bradley, to your best judgment, would Fairmont remain in separate, be able to make those payments, and would be in good fiscal shape? Bradley replied, in my professional opinion, having been the CFO since 2010, absolutely. There is no question about it. When asked later if Fairmont's financial model was sustainable, Bradley confidently responded, I believe it is. It is a very similar model that we've been running since I've been the CFO. It's not that different from before. We always have to adjust the budget based on enrollment. That goes on every year. You have to make adjustments, and you have to live within your means. And Fairmont always does that. He went on to state that in order for Fairmont to fail, they would have to lose all state appropriations and never enroll another student. It wasn't just the financial stability of Fairmont that Bradley contradicted his board on. There was also the matter of tuition, as well as room and board, that both he and Lila Grandstaff found to be of great concern. Currently, Fairmont's yearly cost of attendance is $5,086, while Fairmont State is $8,208. Fairmont students would be subjected to the tuition increase once merged with FSU. Fairmont would no longer be independent, and they would lose their accreditation. In addition to tuition increase, all first and second year FSU students under the age of 21 living outside a 50-mile radius would be required to live on campus. A cost of an additional $10,022 per year. That would affect the majority of nearly 400 Fairmont students currently under the age of 21. Though FSU board member Jason Pizzatella made claims that students could apply for waivers and that they would likely be approved, Lila Grandstaff pushed back. Grandstaff stated that promises of a waiver before a student is enrolled can't be done, and that according to the Department of Education's civil rights policy, all students are supposed to be equal, and one can't be afforded special tuition or privileges over another. She also asserted that the fear many students would be required to repeat classes was a strong possibility. When asked how Hinkle and Hinton could claim a savings of $10 million with the merger, CFO Bradley cited that it was his belief that the only way to achieve that was firing more than 100 employees, the majority of those being in duplicate services such as general education, admissions, and recruitment, the business office, health care facilities, and all over support services. When the delegates dug deeper into the series of events that led the current bill coming before them for a vote, a bizarre web of intentional actions designed to deceive the public began to untangle. a vote of no confidence. After being appointed to the Fairmont Board of Governors, both Hinton and Hinkle asserted they discovered the old bill, drafted in 2017-2018. Despite the separation being widely publicized, they stated that they knew little about the agreement and wondered why the bill hadn't passed. They testified that, for informational purposes only, numerous meetings with various individuals had been had, but the first meeting in Charleston with senators was held in late of 2021. Hinton testifying to November-December of 2021, and Hinkle testifying to December-January 2021-2022. The men claimed they only wanted to better understand the bill and the separation of the two institutions. Later, upon further questioning, those details changed greatly. It was discovered that the late 2021 meeting was more in-depth than originally portrayed and consisted of multiple senators and FSU representatives. When asked who was the first to contact the other regarding the remerger, Hinkle stated that the two institutions came together equally and at the same time to facilitate remerger discussions. FSU Board Chair David Goldberg says otherwise. We've been having conversations with Fairmont for a couple of years. Not this legislative session, but the legislative session before. There had been talks about the schools coming together. Some of the board members were not for it. Some others in the community were, and legislation did not pass. It was dead. A separation agreement was signed. Moving on. Then, new board members were put in place at Fairmont, and they resurrected conversations with us. Fairmont went through painstaking efforts to separate from the bonds, create a separation agreement, to completely remove the programs from each other and their campuses with a time frame that included moving the aeronautical off the facility and moving forward. You can talk to Chairman Hinkle, Lisa Lang, and some of the board members. They were the ones that approached us about bringing the programs back together. David Goldberg, Fairmont State Board Chair. Surprised to hear of this additional secret meeting, the delegates asked who was in attendance. Hinkle, stumbling over his words, first stated he couldn't remember. Then he clarified by saying he didn't know any of the individuals at the meeting except for Senator Bob Beach and Higher Education Policy Commissioner Chancellor Sarah Tucker. Sources say that this claim by Mr. Hinkle is untrue and that he did know all of the participants of the meeting. It wasn't until a special session of Fairmont's board on January 26th, after the late 2021 meeting and the January 18th meeting, that a vote was taken to explore the remerger of the two schools. This vote contradicted Hinkle's assertion that he had already had full board support to go forward with the remerger on January 18th. It was board member Anthony Hinton that brought forth the motion. B. Move forward with a discussion of strategic partnership with Fairmont State. Anthony Hinton moved that the Fairmont Board of Governors will discuss a potential strategic partnership between Fairmont Community and Technical College and Fairmont State University to look at opportunities from operational perspective. Anthony Hinton moved to amend this motion by asserting the statement that Fairmont Community and Technical College will engage with a legislative consultant to assist in the exploratory process with the intent of maintaining the college's best interest. Jillian Soul seconded the motion. All agreed. Motion carried. Fairmont CTC Board of Governors special meeting, January 26, 2022. Not long after that meeting, Fairmont's Faculty Senate and Classified Staff Council voted no confidence in the Fairmont Board of Governors. In a press release, Faculty Senate President Susan Coffendaffer stated, Fairmont's Board of Governors is acting contrary to our distinct mission as an independent and autonomous college and is not acting in the best interest of our college. following Chair Hinkle's mischaracterization of a January 26 vote of Pierrepont's Board of Governors as a vote for a merger with Fairmont State University, Pierrepont's Faculty Senate held an emergency meeting to discuss the questionable activities of the 2021-2022 Pierrepont Community and Technical College Board of Governors. Faculty Senate voted against a potential merger and directed the Senate Executive Committee to identify grievances and draft a resolution and complaint of no confidence against Pierrepont Board of Governors. A valid vote requiring 2/3 vote or 37 faculty. The vote exceeded that threshold, and only one faculty opposed the resolution of complaint of no confidence. Let me be clear so our elected leaders hear and know this one-sided endeavor is not accepted by groups that make up Pierrepont. Pierrepont Community and Technical College must remain independent to fulfill our community and technical college mission and better serve the citizens of our 13-county service region. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Faculty Senate of Pierrepont and Community Technical College approve this motion and vote of no confidence in Pierrepont's Board of Governors. We ask that they and any other appointed member who cannot advocate for Pierrepont's independence and the separation of community and technical college be replaced with appropriately vetted and trusted volunteers from within communities that include our 13-county service region. Pierrepont Faculty Senate Statement, February 15th, 2022. In the 18-page press release, the Faculty Senate identifies in detail a timeline of events and specific violations. The statement went on to list grievances that facilitated the vote, including the board members' strong conflicts of interest that created the appearance of impropriety and taint the decisions of the whole. A lack of transparency and violations of Open Meetings Act, not doing their due diligence before entering an agreement with FSU, and betraying the oath of loyalty and duty of obedience to Pierrepont by not acting in its best interest or consistent with its mission. In addition, Board Chair and Harrison County Commissioner David Hinkle's continuous misrepresentation to the press and college community, as well as his poor and unprofessional behavior at recent county commissioner meetings, were cited as violation of Pierrepont's Code of Conduct. Following the vote, no investigation from the state or governor's office was done, and no board members were replaced. Delegates of the Education Committee posed the same question to Chairman Hinkle and Board Member Hinton numerous times during their testimony. If the A&P program was the financial hindrance to Pierrepont that they claimed it was, why not just turn over the program to FSU instead of giving up their independence and accreditation with a merger? Neither of the men could give an answer that any average person listening would be able to make sense of. Both did admit numerous times that they weren't involved with the day-to-day activities and displayed to the committee that they did not have all the information one would expect in order to make such a monumental decision. When we step back from the situation, all of these months later, we are able to better understand that this was not just about two institutions playing out a dramatic divorce with second guessing and regret. This was a game of chess. The players skilled in their strategy and ability to see the moves they needed to make far in advance. The institutions, the presidents, the faculty, the staff, the students, and the community, just pawns with little value and used to better their position. Because in chess, the pawns are the pieces that you sacrifice to win. On July 6, 2021, Monongalia County Commissioner Tom Bloom had an important meeting. Over the previous 3 months, he had been quietly meeting with Jonathan Variable, director of Morgantown Municipal Airport, Senator Beach, and Pierrepont CTC President Dr. Anthony Hancock. They had been working together to help Pierrepont fulfill the requirements of the MOU. The A&P program needed a new home, and with many students at Pierrepont coming from Monongalia County, Morgantown wanted to welcome them. Originally, discussions had been had to move the entire program to a new facility in Morgantown. It would have allowed the program to continue and to thrive under Fairmont. It would have allowed them to follow through with the MOU to vacate the Robert C. Byrd National Aerospace Education Center. It would have allowed them to expand their footprint in West Virginia by expanding to additional counties that they already serve. It would have allowed them to stay independent and maintain their accreditation. It was an answer to a problem facilitated by individuals who came together and worked toward a legitimate solution in the best interests of all involved. Unfortunately, the deal would never be finalized, and the discussion set off a domino effect that would bring to light the corruption of our government. Questionable appointments. After discovering Dr. Hancock's work to save the program and to move it to Morgantown, Senator Mike Romano, a Democrat from Harrison, stepped in. Sources claim that Romano had confronted Hancock and made it clear to the president that he was running the train and he, Hancock, better get on board. It was at this time that Dr. Hancock backed away from the plans to move the entire program to Morgantown and instead reworked the discussions to focus on the county becoming the home of the expanded program. Expansions would include a hospitality program, a woman in aviation program, and an engine repair program. Plans for the city to build 2 new hangars to assist with these programs, a 20,000 square foot hangar and a 10,000 square foot hangar, were also discussed. The engine repair program would potentially be the only one of its kind on the East Coast, if not the country. Senator Bob Beach had pledged $100,000 to help fund the program, with the city of Morgantown considering an additional pledge of $50,000. According to County Commissioner Tom Bloom, before the deal with the city of Morgantown could be finalized, all conversations had ceased, and Dr. Hancock wasn't returning calls. There were private discussions being had with the state officials to move the aviation program to Morgantown, but then they suddenly stopped, Bloom remembered. Coincidentally, it is at this same time that Fairmont's Board of Governors was experiencing an overhaul. For 3 years, former Board of Governors Chair Tom Barlow had attempted to appeal to the Governor Justice to appoint or reappoint board members. Many of the current board members had expired terms, and with no end in sight, some were becoming fatigued, while others just wanted continuity. Barlow, Vice Chair Chip Van Allsburg, as well as former executive assistant, had contacted Governor Justice's office in various ways. They had called, sent letters, and even went down in person. For 3 years, they were ignored, and just as the board and Dr. Hancock had made moves to fulfill the MOU and find a new home for the A&P program, Governor Justice stepped in. At the end of June of 2021, Dr. Hancock was notified that, effective immediately, Board of Governors Chair Tom Barlow and Vice Chair Chip Van Allsburg, strong advocates for Fairmont remaining separate from FSU, were being removed from their position, and 5 new board members would be appointed. No one knew who had recommended the new members or why they were suddenly appointed with no warning. These board members would be the same members to facilitate the remerger with FSU and to cause Fairmont's faculty and staff to declare a vote of no confidence. Though not well known to many, the new board members were exactly what Governor Justice was looking for. Lacking any higher education background or diversity in their fields of business, almost every board member had one surprising thing in common. They all were associated with the aviation industry. New Chairman David Hinkle is a Harrison County Commissioner, but also sits on the Board of Directors at the North Central West Virginia Airport Authority. Board Hopper and Vice Chairwoman Lisa Lang is the wife of Bridgeport Mayor Andy Lang, who also serves on the Board of Directors at the North Central West Virginia Airport Authority. Board member Anthony Hinton is head of service centers for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Regional Jets, a company that only 2 weeks prior had, with Governor Justice and Senator Romano at the forefront, announced an expansion in Bridgeport that would include 2 new hangars. According to Romano, the announcement was years in the making. Hinton is also on the board of directors for West Virginia Pratt & Whitney, Canada, an aircraft engine manufacturer, and he also serves on the West Virginia Aerospace Alliance board of directors. Lastly, board member Thomas Cole is a retired physician's liaison for Mon General, a Mon Health hospital which FSU board chair David Goldberg is the president and CEO. In addition to the new board members, Governor Justice also reappointed board member Brian Bozarth for an additional term. Bozarth works for Pratt & Whitney Canada as a finance supervisor and is also on the board of directors of the West Virginia Aerospace Alliance. If the sudden and strategic appointments of the new board members and removal of others wasn't already enough to raise eyebrows, 2 additional matters also added to the confusion. Though former Chair Tom Barlow and Vice Chair Chip Van Allsburg had been removed without notice, and all the board members had taken their positions on the board in late June, none of the appointments were ever confirmed until October of 2021. There was also one board member who, interestingly enough, was neither reappointed or replaced. Larry Puccio Jr., the son of Joe Manchin's former chief of staff turned lobbyist Larry Puccio Sr., was originally appointed to Pierpont's Board of Governors in August of 2017. Though it was the same time Bozarth was appointed, unlike Bozarth, Puccio Jr. did not receive an official reappointment, but was not replaced on the Board of Governors, despite his term expiring in August of 2020. It should also be noted that Jay Puccio, the brother of Larry Jr., was also appointed and currently serves on the Fairmont State Board of Governors. At this time, in addition to Larry Puccio Jr.'s, 2 other Pierpont Board of Governor members are serving with expired terms. Both Anthony Hinton and Brian Bozarth have terms that expired this past June of 2022. FSU Board Chair and President and CEO of Mon Health, David Goldberg, was asked about the speculation of a conflict of interest in regards to Pierpont's Board Chair David Hinkle's position on County Commission. I met Chairman Hinkle through the process. I don't know him over and above since he became the chairman of Pierpont. We, Mon General, are quasi in Harrison County. Anything we would want to do to come into the community, we have to file regulatory approaches, whether filing for a certificate of need or buy a practice or building a building. That's all on the state level. That's not at the county level, unless it's zoning involved. But that's about it. There is no other interest or personal agenda at all. David Goldberg, Fairmont State Board Chair. Shortly after this statement, Mon Health announced they applied for a certificate of need to open a new hospital in Harrison County with an estimated project cost of $22.5 million. Governor Jim Justice may appear as an unwitting participant in the appointments that may or may not have benefited his friends, but his role in the Pierpont FSU saga is substantial. During the original negotiations for the separation of the 2 institutions, Justice requested an independent evaluation of the situation to be done by Dr. Jack Hershey, president of the Ohio Association of Community Colleges, was brought to West Virginia to review the institutions and to give an opinion. According to multiple sources, Dr. Hershey determined that the institutions should remain separated. When a copy of that report was requested by a few notable individuals involved with the Fairmont Pierpont ordeal, including some in Charleston, they were told by Dr. Hershey that Governor Justice gave him a specific instructions to not produce any written reports and that he was only to give him a verbal report. During his testimony at the House Education Committee, Fairmont CFO Dale Bradley spoke on the procedures that were meant to be taken during the separation. Explaining that the two state agencies can't sue each other, Bradley added, "Code calls for an arbitration committee. We actually asked the governor to take this through an arbitration process, and he refused to do that. We're not sure why." After Bradley's testimony, which two members of the governor's office unexpectedly showed up to hear, sources say Senate President Blair was also enraged. He had so enraged that he had threatened to have Bradley fired from his job and arrested for what Blair claimed to be false testimony. Despite being able to corroborate that his testimony was accurate and his evidence contradicted that of Board Chair Hinkle and Board Member Hinton, no such threats or disciplinary action was ever taken to those two men for perjury. Naming it after the Fleetwood Mac song, "Go Your Own Way," delegates Heather Tully, a Republican from Nicholas County, Caleb Hanna, a Republican from Nicholas County, and Laura Kimball, a Republican from Harrison County, proposed an amendment to SB 653 that would keep the two institutions separate and independent, but turn over the A&P program to FSU, a solution recommended by Bradley. A simple solution would be Fairmont is more than willing to allow the A&P program to go to the person who owns the facility, FSU. We are willing to run the program for the next year to allow them to get through accreditation. That takes care of the industry needs. That takes care of the reason we're here and we're going through all of these complicated things. We're going on about tuition and fees and all of this stuff. It fixes everything. Fairmont goes its own way, FSU goes its way, and the A&P program is safe. It's simple. Fairmont CFO Dale Bradley, House Education Committee testimony, March 7th, 2022. Agreeing, the House passed the amendment 90-3, with 7 absent. The bill never makes it to the Senate floor, though. Sources at the Capitol assert that Senator Blair, knowing that the new amendment bill would pass the Senate, confronted Education Committee Chair Senator Patricia Rucker, Republican from Jefferson County. Rucker was not a supporter of the remerger, feeling that 4-year institutions and 2-year institutions should always remain separate. In his attempts to persuade Rucker to change her position, Senator Blair became aggressive, verbally accosting the female senator to such a degree that he scared those who could hear his yelling, and a few prepared to call security to have the Senate president removed. Blair eventually composed himself, but just weeks later, he removed Senator Rucker as education chair, replacing her with former teacher Amy Grady. Spinning the narrative to all who questioned his motives, Blair declared that he appointed Grady because he wanted a teacher in that position. Speaking to the West Virginia State Board of Education, he stated, "I wouldn't send a welder to do an electrician's job." But Blair had done exactly that. Blair was the one who appointed Rucker in the first place, and was hoping that his reputation of intimidation and retaliation would be enough to keep those in the know quiet. The public didn't know the truth, and he just needed to sell them his story in order to escape accountability. The Grand Master. During the 4 months I investigated this story, there was one burning question I was asked by almost every person I spoke with. Why? Why did Governor Justice suppress the report of Dr. Hershey? Why did he not allow for an arbitration during the original separations? Why did Senator Romano prevent Dr. Hancock from fulfilling the MOU and relocating to Morgantown? Why did the governor appoint Appuccio brothers to both boards? Why did he replace Pierpont's board of governors suddenly? Why did the new board revive meetings with Fairmont State? Why were senators complicit in the discussions allowing the board to blatantly violate the Open Meetings Act? Why were the presidents kept out of those meetings and prevented from speaking on the matter? Why did Senators Mike Caputo, a Democrat from Marion County, Ryan Weld, Republican from Brooke County, and Mike Romano from Harrison County sponsor a bill to remerge the institutions without fully investigating the financial situation of Fairmont? Why did the board ignore the financial report and supporting documents provided by Fairmont's CFO Dale Bradley? Why did Hinkle and Hinton commit perjury during their testimony at the House Education Committee in an effort to get them to pass SB 653? Why was Senate President Blair intimidating those who could block the bill and censoring students? Why was the governor's office quietly participating in secret meetings and acting as spectators during Bradley's influential testimony? Without being able to see the entire picture, the public has had to fill in the blanks with the little information provided by the institutions and our legislators, then build their own narrative. Every person you ask about Fairmont State saga will likely give you a different answer as to what happened. Unfortunately, even with all the information already provided in this article, there is still a large piece missing. A piece that needs to be discussed in order for anyone to be able to form legitimate opinions. During my many interviews with the numerous sources who spoke with me candidly, there was one topic, one name that spooked everyone. During one specific interview with which my source allowed me to record, they would require me to stop the recording any time this person was mentioned. After nearly every interview where his role in the story was discussed, I was given a similar warning. The words of one source rattled in my head weeks after they were spoken. Be careful. You are playing with fire. He is the most powerful individual in West Virginia. Larry Puccio Sr., a lifelong friend of Senator Joe Manchin and former campaign consultant for Governor Jim Justice, could arguably be titled the Grand Master of West Virginia politics. Often operating in the shadows, Puccio has a degree of influence that many in West Virginia could never really understand. He is a controversial figure that has assisted many leaders of the state with becoming wealthy beyond comprehension, while using the hardworking and loyal people of West Virginia to do it. He and his partner Angel Moore have made hundreds of thousands of dollars lobbying for large and commonly out-of-state corporations owned by many of our wealthy leaders. Many of the policies Puccio has lobbied for hurt West Virginia, our natural resources, our topography, and our people. Larry Puccio's conflict of interest with Fairmont State University and Fairmont CTC run deep, and no one is discussing it publicly. Shortly after his friend Governor Jim Justice appointed the Puccio sons, Larry Puccio Jr. and Jay Puccio, to the boards of dueling institution, Puccio Sr. was quietly hired by Fairmont State as a lobbyist. President Martin, with her business background and always looking toward FSU's financial situation, was strongly opposed to the hire. FSU had always had a graduate student appointed to the role of legislative liaison. Puccio's name never officially appeared on any Fairmont State Board of Governors or committee agendas, nor in any minutes. Our first notice of the hire comes in December of 2020, when discussions of hiring a government affairs liaison is presented to the board. Though the minutes show that the discussions were only to possibly hire someone, Jay Puccio abstention from the vote led many to assume that the board had already had talks of an appointment outside of the official meeting, and that Larry Puccio Sr. had already been decided on. Discussions and probable action for budget allocation and funds to support retention of a government affairs liaison. Chairman Goldberg advises that we are going into the next legislative session. We would like to have a focused approach as we approach Charleston and our delegation. Therefore, we would like to have discussions with the board, potentially proceeding forward with a dedication dedicated governmental affairs representative. Mr. John Shapira advised that in light of our current financial position and the current environment, he would like to defer this item to the Finance Committee. Mr. J. Puccio advised that he would like to recuse himself from the discussion. John Shapira made a motion to accept the following. A. I move to defer the discussion and possible action of a government affairs liaison to the Finance Committee. Rusty Hudson second. 11 approved, 0 opposed, 1 abstained. The motion passed. Fairmont State University Board of Governors meeting minutes, December 16th of 2020. In order to keep the hire quiet, the board sent the decision to the Finance Committee, whose members consist of only Board of Governor members Jennifer Kinty, David Goldberg, Jason Henderson, Rusty Hudson, and Deborah Prezioso. On the committee agenda, Puccio's name is still not mentioned, and instead an appointment for a pro bono government affairs liaison is. No minutes for this meeting has ever been posted. 5. Information. Pro bono appointment of government affairs liaison. Fairmont State Finance Committee agenda, February 3rd, 2021. Sources state that Puccio was hired for just under $50,000, which would prevent his name from appearing on the agenda for a Board of Governors vote. Part of the conditions of his hire were that he was to report to Dr. Martin each month. Refusing to meet with Martin and instead only meeting with Board Chair Goldberg and Vice Chair Hudson, this was a condition that he never followed. It was only through the required lobbyist reports, disclosures to the West Virginia Ethics Commission, that we can confirm Puccio does, in fact, work for Fairmont State University. It should also be noted that Larry Puccio Sr. is also a lobbyist for FSU Vice Chair Rutsey Hudson, Alabama-based company, Diversified Oil and Gas. Beating out ExxonMobil as America's biggest natural gas well operator, Diversified Oil and Gas operates approximately 69,000 oil and gas wells and is worth over $1 billion. One of the natural gas industry's top lobbying priorities last year was stripping the methane fee, dubbed the natural gas tax by opponents out of the Build Back Better Act. The fee, meant to cut emissions of the potential greenhouse gas, represented a particular threat that one of the companies and in the coalition, Diversity Energy. The company is the 8th largest methane emitter relative to its natural gas production, according to analysis of the 100 largest oil and natural gas producers in the country conducted last year for Sears, a sustainability nonprofit. Their entire model is buying tired old wells and extracting the last bits of revenue they can out of them, said Andrew Logan, the nonprofit's senior director of oil and gas. And the economics of that may work in a world that actually puts a value on methane emissions. Washington Post. Puccio was an instrumental part of the secret meetings and discussions regarding the merger of Fairmont and FSU. His disclosures to the West Virginia Ethics Commission show numerous dinners paid for by Puccio, with the main figures behind the push for the SB 653, including Senators Caputo, Weld, Romano, Rucker, and Nelson, Senators President Blair, Delegates Amy Summers and Joe Statler, as well as Governor Jim Justice's Chief of Staff, Brian Abram. Disclosures filed with the West Virginia Secretary of State's office show that Puccio was also a contributor to the campaigns of Senator Mike Caputo, Governor Jim Justice, and West Virginia Treasurer Riley Moore. Mr. Moore has been under national scrutiny for the banning of numerous financial firms from doing business in West Virginia, including J.P. Morgan, that worked predominantly with West Virginia public universities. The 5 named firms, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, BlackRock, and J.P. Morgan, have publicly declared that they were reducing financing to new coal projects. At the May 17th Fairmont State Board of Governors meeting, where President Martin was stripped of her powers, a new face appeared. Without board approval or the knowledge of many board members and administrators, Puccio's business partner and attorney Angel Moore took the role of FSU legal counsel. My sources state that due to the fear of retaliation from executive board of governor members, as well as Puccio and Moore, they have been apprehensive to challenge the appointment. In addition to Hudson's diversified oil and gas and FSU, West Virginia ethics reports show that since 2017, Puccio's lobbyist portfolio included broadband communications, telephone and telecommunications, internet security, business issues, collector licensing requirement, taxation, economic development, infrastructure development, construction, energy regulations, coal and coal mining, oil and gas regulations, tourism and travel, healthcare, medical cannabis, jails, prisons, corrections, sports betting, gaming, horse racing, and charter schools. Other prominent institutions on his lobbyist disclosures are companies owned by Governor Jim Justice, including the Greenbrier Resort. According to Forbes, Governor Justice has a fortune of nearly $1.7 billion, making him the richest individual in West Virginia. In 2009, he made a lot of money when he sold Bluestone Resources, a company that considered a variety of West Virginia coal mines and is represented by Larry Puccio, to a Russian company for $500 million, with additional millions being sold in stock. The governor's businesses include coal mines, resorts, and numerous agricultural institutions. Most of these are all regulated by the same agencies that he controls. According to a report done by ProPublica, Justice's businesses have been sued numerous times for failure to pay their bills. The publication found that more than $128 million in judgments and settlements involving the governor. Forbes also contends that Justice had over $13 million in tax liens, which he states has since been paid. In addition to the fortune that he has already amassed, Governor Justice's companies reportedly took advantage of the PPP program to the tune of $24 million. In all, Justice's companies received between $11.2 million and $24.4 million in PPP money. Justice's companies received PPP money from a mixture of small local banks and regional financial institutions. Previous reporting has shown banks were favoring their existing regular customers when processing PPP applications. ProPublica. It is not just our current governor that has been the subject of numerous dirty dealings. Former governor and United States Senator Joe Manchin has also been the focus of many federal investigations. For more than 20 years, Manchin stayed a step ahead of federal investigators as they closed in around his inner circle. A review of State House investigation reports, public court records, and sealed documents obtained by The Intercept reveals a decades-long history of investigations into employees, contractors, and business associates of Manchin. These incidents involve investigations into tax evasion, grand larceny, campaign finance violations, and an investigation by federal agencies, including the FBI and IRS, into a wide range of alleged criminal activity centered around Manchin's governor's office. In 2017, both Puccio and a spokesperson for Manchin made contradictory statements to the press about their respective connections to a firm named in $14.6 million hotel bankruptcy suit. Puccio had also played a role which had not been previously reported in the scheme to charge West Virginians more for electricity in order to keep energy systems' biggest customer viable. Energy Systems, which had been owned by the Manchin family for over 3 decades. Manchin launched it while serving in the state Senate, purchased low-quality waste coal from mines, and resells it to power plants as fuel. In the affidavit, workers also allege that they had seen an ongoing scheme to crush coal into a size that would be recorded as waste and could be hauled away for free and sold at a profit to brokers. By brokers, I apologize. During one surveillance period conducted by West Virginia State Police, according to the affidavit, all reported coal leaving the Peabody mine arrived at Jolicoeur Docks, a company owned by Joseph Loretta Jr. and James L. Loretta. James Loretta currently serves as an officer for LP Minerals LLC, which operates, among others, the Humphrey No. 7 mine site, which is the largest supplier of coal to Manchin's company, Energy Systems. The Intercept. Puccio was Manchin's chief of staff before becoming the chairman of the West Virginia Democratic Party. He later resigned from his position after members called for his removal for donations he made toward the campaign of Jim Justice, a now registered Republican. Speaking to the New Republic, Shane Azizandi, chairman of the Monongalia County Democratic Executive Committee, said, "People are afraid of Joe Manchin. He's the king of West Virginia Democratic Party, and it's very hard to find anyone who's willing to speak out against him. I've had people tell me West Virginia doesn't have a Democratic Party. We have a Joe Manchin Party." Though she once had blasted Larry Puccio for supporting Jim Justice, Puccio's successor, former chair of the West Virginia Democratic Party, Belinda Biafor, encourages West Virginia Democrats to ignore the blatant corruption of Senator Manchin, his obvious conflicts of interest, and the position he takes in Washington that contradict their Democratic policies and the best interests of the citizens of West Virginia. Biafor suggested more Democrats should follow the senator's example if they wanted to win in West Virginia. Right now, the only Democrat winning is Joe Manchin. Maybe folks ought to play off him a little more. She said, "He's doing something right." New Republic. What Biafor fails to realize is that Senator Manchin, Governor Justice, Larry Puccio are more alike than they are different. Manchin telling Metro News, "Larry and I will always be together." If West Virginia is no longer divided by Republican or Democrat, and instead as the parties of Justice and Manchin, then Larry Puccio would be the unofficial chairman, the middleman that controls both of West Virginia's most powerful men. If you want a successful political career in West Virginia or have aspirations of becoming governor, as my sources say Senate President Craig Blair does have, then Larry Puccio would be the man that you would want in your corner. As a quid pro quo, you would do everything that you could to give him what he wanted, even if that meant remerging two institutions and hurting the community, students, the faculty in the process. Still, it's hard to understand why Governor Justice and Larry Puccio wanted so desperately for the institutions to be remerged, and why Pierpont's A&P program was so instrumental to these men that they would commit political corruption in order to get what they wanted. It's not until this past May, in Larry Puccio's lobbyist disclosure, that some evidence of this entire ordeal, paid for by taxpayers and spun to remove accountability, was for personal gain. In the report, Larry Puccio suddenly names 5 new institutions that he was hired to represent. Those institutions being the Benham Airport Authority, also known as North Central West Virginia Airport, the Greenbrier County Airport, Huntington Tri-State Airport, Mid-Ohio Valley Regional Airport, and the Raleigh County Memorial Airport. In addition to these new declarations on Puccio's lobbyist reports, Harrison County held their groundbreaking for the $20 million expansion of Mitsubishi at the North Central West Virginia Airport. This is a monumental day for us. This announcement is the summation of almost a decade worth of work by a lot of people, Hinton stated, as reported by the by Connect Bridgeport. This expansion cements our commitment, MHI, to the state of West Virginia and truly positions the North Central West Virginia Airport in being paramount in the regional aviation infrastructure. Senator Romano, who also sits on the Benham Airport Authority, which oversees the North Central West Virginia Airport, and had opposed the move of Fairmont CTC to Morgantown, as well as opposing the Morgantown Municipal Airport from being able to expand their runway, calling it a waste of resources, commended Jim Justice for his strong support of this project. Romano said that there was no hesitation from Justice. No governor believed in this project more than you did. We could not have done it without you, said Romano. Connect Bridgeport. For the final grand spectacle, United States Senators Joe Manchin and Shelley Moore Capito announced federal contributions from the United States Department of Transportation to 3 West Virginia airports, totaling $8,756,448. $1,444,49 going to the North Central West Virginia Regional Airport. $3,142,899 going to the Tri-State Airport, and $4,569,500 going to Governor Justice's Greenbrier Airport. Repeated messages for comment made to Jordan Dameron, Director of Communications and Assistant Legal Counsel of Governor Justice, were not returned. Requests for comment from FSU board member Jay Puccio were also met with resistance. Puccio stating, "I have been advised not to speak on anything." When asked who had advised Mr. Puccio, he refused to elaborate or to give any further comment on the subject. Reflections and hope. In the end, after many years of back and forth, ulterior motives, and scheming, Fairmont CTC and Fairmont State University are separate and will remain so. Fairmont had their extension to vacate. FSU has an interim president who loathes students and refuses to meet with them. Our airports have substantial federal funding. Both institutions have boards that have overwhelming conflicts of interest appointed by a governor with just as many conflicts himself. There are senators, delegates, and commissioners complicit in the corruption. FSU is censoring students, staff, and faculty. Larry Puccio and his partner essentially run 2 higher education institutions with his son on both boards, and the faces of the 2 separate colleges who were gagged to prevent them from speaking out on their opposition to the dirty dealings of all involved are both gone. Removed from their positions because they were both outsiders, one a man of color, the other a Hispanic woman, neither from West Virginia, and neither willing to put aside their convictions to play the corrupt game of political chess that was expected of them. One West Virginia University president saw a lot of the events that transpired and shared their thoughts. West Virginia isn't very welcoming of outsiders, and truthfully, there are 2 different measuring sticks they use, one for women and people of color, and one for everyone else. Some boards select presidents they think they can manipulate. It's very lonely on the top, but all you can do is put on a positive face and keep going. I was advised by one source numerous times to just let it go, saying that the 2 institutions were separate now and that there was nothing to report. I disagreed. I explained to them that this isn't a story about Fairmont State University and Fairmont CTC. This is a story about West Virginia. The 2 colleges only being an example of a bigger issue that we are faced with. According to the U.S. News and World Report, We are a state ranked number 47 in the country, with a median income of only $26,000 and only 29% of our citizens with college education. We are number 47 in healthcare, number 45 in education, number 48 in economy, and number 50 in infrastructure. West Virginia is a poor, statistically uneducated, struggling state, being taken advantage of billion-dollar corporations and politicians who feed on our weaknesses. West Virginia is one of the most beautiful states in this country. Rich with history, its people are inspiring, beautiful, kind, wise, and loyal. West Virginians make me proud to be able to live and to raise my children here. But they deserve better. They deserve leaders that will make decisions in their best interest and not lie to them and sell them false promises while turning them into generational poor worker bees. We need to demand more oversight of our boards and our local councils. We need to hold those at the top accountable and demand transparency. We need to insist that our good politicians stop being complicit, or they will be replaced as well. We need to stand up to censorship of our citizens and the attempts at dividing us on issues. And we need to remind those elected that they work for us. There is so much we can disagree on, but our children's future is one that can unite us all. The dream of every parent is that their children are able to achieve more than we did. Everyone wants change as long as it doesn't affect them, Dr. Mirta Martin said while reflecting on her tenure as president of Fairmont State. They are the words that easily define many of us. The average West Virginian putting their child on the bus or getting into their car to drive to their blue-collar job are not reading the Washington Post, New York Times. They believe that their neighbors are honest, and they believe that their West Virginia sons are good, even if they should stumble sometimes. But they are making decisions without all of the information. If they want these men to stay in office, then so be it. But allow them to know the full truth so that they have the freedom afforded to them by our democracy to decide for themselves. Attempting to untangle the web of conflicts of interest and pinpoint a single motivation behind all of this would be impossible. But when we stop long enough to actually look at all of the elements in context, and we can see the situation in aerial view, to throw in an aviation pun, we can better see that each individual acted in their own self-interest. Whether it was for political or financial gain, a quid pro quo, or just loyalty to an old friend, the people of West Virginia have been gaslighted by the very individuals that we elected to save us. Citizens and students should not be charged for FOIA requests of any higher education institution. And assistance from the state should be made available to make lawsuits more feasible when violations have occurred. We are subjected to these institutions' constant lack of regard for those that they serve, and with their money and power, they are given free rein to do as they please, knowing that students and parents of West Virginia can't fight them. It's similar to the biblical story of David and Goliath, though we should also remember that it was only David, the young boy with a single pebble, that brought down the giant. One could argue all day about Fairmont and Fairmont State, about Dr. Martin and Dr. Hancock, about MOUs, the House versus the Senate, about Manchin, Justice, and Puccio, the role of lobbyists in higher education, the lack of oversight of our Board of Governors, and a system that prevents citizens from being able to fight back due to a lack of resources and financial means. But as we sit around our tables and we have these very important discussions, there is a demographic that is still being forgotten: the students. We have somehow forgot that in all of this, it is the students, those kids that fought for Dr. Martin, that signed that Fairmont letter opposing the remerger, that are the individuals of this those are the individuals that all of this is supposed to be for. Our board of governors, our politicians, our community may want to cater to faculty, staff, and to those in power, but they are disillusioned. This generation of students are strong, passionate, and aware. They will not be so forgiven of our sins when they come to power, hopefully sooner rather than later. And it will be them that will facilitate change. Perhaps now is the time that we start listening to what they want, because someday Justice, Manchin, Blair, and Puccio will be gone. And perhaps that passionate SGA president that you so easily dismissed will be running this state with more integrity and honor than any of our current elected officials, and he will remember these days. Our students are not ignorant. They may be young, but while doing this story, I have come to realize that their ethics are stronger than of any adult I have known. Many times in my investigation, I found myself overwhelmed with hopelessness for West Virginia. It was only my conversations with students that my faith was restored again. West Virginia should be proud of them, and we should do everything that we can to protect them and their freedom of speech. We need to assure that our higher education institutions have strict oversight, no conflicts, and are properly obeying the Open Meetings Act and FOIA request. It is also the obligation of our elected officials to be sure they do their research before approving any appointments of board members, and that all complaints regarding institutions are taken seriously. All hope is not lost, though. There are those that we can look toward as testimony of the strength of the state. In addition to the nearly 40 anonymous sources interviewed for this story, willing to speak the truth, there are many others not so anonymous that need to be commended for their courage. Pierpont's faculty and staff for their vote of no confidence and their devotion and their loyalty to their institution. Senator Patricia Rucker for standing up to Senator President Blair and sticking to her convictions. Pierpont CFO Dale Bradley for doing what was right and bravely testifying at the Education Committee meeting with facts that completely contradicted the lies of Pierpont Board Chairman David Hinkle and Board Member Anthony Hinton. Our West Virginia House Education Committee, from both sides of the aisle, displayed incredible acts of leadership that we should all demand from others in office. They asked the right questions and amended a bad Senate bill. Delegates are often not elevated with the same respect afforded to our senators, but do not underestimate the power that they hold. Our delegates are the closest thing that we have to being a part of our state government. Often still holding everyday jobs, they have not yet disconnected from those that they represent, and they are not fools. Fairmont State Board of Governors Student Representative Maya Bennett and Staff Representative John Dodds for speaking out against removing President Martin, a decision that they felt was made in poor faith, and they demanded their words to be put on the record. Outspoken Monongalia County Commissioner Tom Bloom for not playing the political game of chess and allowing himself to be quoted about meetings that few ever knew about. Dr. Mirta Martin and Dr. Anthony Hancock for being the presidents that they were hired to be. Both strong, powerful, intelligent, and loyal individuals. They carried the weight of public perception, wishing so badly that they could speak out and not being allowed to. Despite what others may believe, these two people never spoke ill of one another, both admiring the difficult position the other was in and commending their professionalism. After 4 months investigating this story, I found myself one light evening overwhelmed. Reaching out to the only person I felt that could understand my struggle and possibly care, I wrote an email. After a long day of interviews and writing, I am more disheartened than I have ever been over where we are in the state. The ultimate optimist when it comes to politics, I'm typically the voice of empowerment, preaching about how we can achieve so much if we truly want it. We just need to be patient and keep building one brick at a time. Tonight, though, I am disillusioned, overcome with the reality that perhaps no matter how hard we work to try to build something or to change things for the better, all we are really doing is building around the dragon, encasing it into our homes and becoming immune to its stench and burn. It was just days later that I picked myself back up and I continued. It was one young man's rectitude that forced me to keep writing. His words danced in my head and as tears of pride came to my eyes. This young man, Fairmont State University student government president Zach Taylor, is the example of leadership we should demand, and the words of this remarkable student are what I will leave you with. What I do, I'm operating just for the students, and I do feel as though it is in the best interest of the students when I am informing them, when I'm telling them everything. That's why I do what I do. That's why petitions, polls, things like that are necessary so that I know how the students feel. I don't want to just be acting blind. Even if the majority of students on this campus disagreed with me, which I don't believe that they do, I have never received anything to warrant that. If they all disagreed with me, then I would act differently. Advisors come and go. They change all the time. Presidents come and go. They change all the time. And I mean that with the university. I mean that with me. I'll be gone in a year. But until I leave, I want to know that I am working toward leaving something better than when I found it. And when I found it, it was an absolute train wreck. SGA was at the will and the pleasure of so many people at this university. We're not anymore. I stood up against everyone at the university when I believed the students' best interests were at heart. So that's what I will continue to do. So I just don't want any lines to be drawn while I'm standing in the same place, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to move. Zach Taylor, Fairmont State Student Government President. That concludes Corruption in Higher Education, Part 1 and Part 2 of my article. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for listening and watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And remember, you can go to lumenreadmedia.com to view some additional documents, including the vote of no confidence, some meeting minutes, and some agendas, as well as Larry Puccio's lobbyist reports since 2017. I hope you guys all have a wonderful evening, and I hope that you continue to keep fighting for West Virginia, for our students, for our community, because this is an amazing state and one I am proud to be a part of. But we deserve better. We have amazing people here. We deserve better. Hold them accountable. Keep them transparent. You guys have a wonderful evening.